And I think diversity in the workforce creates great companies and great businesses. And if you don't have different opinions at the table, I think you fail in the long run and you lose. And I believe that in my core. But I think having the pressure and being hammered to do certain things and to check certain boxes, I think is wrong and not effective. And I think, great leaders want different views. And I think great leaders and great companies that thrive long term, I think the best way to do it is to show that you have a diverse workforce and that you're bringing people in that are qualified and you're not bringing people out in just because you want to check a box.
Prominent CEOs, leading economists, iconic investors. Insights from the experts. The Walker Webcast with Willy Walker. See who's next.
In typical form, my friend Anthony comes flying in at the last moment. I'm literally calling him. I'm calling friends. I'm like, where'd the guy go? And all of a sudden, this is like Anthony passing me on a bike. It comes really fast. It comes really hard.
I wish.
All right. I'm going to dive into an intro and then we'll dive in here, Anthony. It's great to have you. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm really pleased to have my friend and mental health advocate, Anthony Shriver, joining me on the Walker Webcast today. Before I introduce Anthony, I'd also like to mention that May is Minds of All Kinds Month, as well as Jewish American Heritage Month. Given the ongoing conflict in Israel and Gaza and the growing incidences of anti-Semitism across the United States, we should all remember and celebrate the extremely important role that the Jewish people, their religion, and their culture have played in the history and success of our country. Anthony Paul Shriver is an American activist for people with intellectual disabilities. In 1989, he founded Best Buddies International, an international organization that helps people with intellectual disabilities find employment and social opportunity. He is the nephew of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and Senator Edward Kennedy. He is currently the chairman of his first cousin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s We the People Party. He's an amazing athlete, father of 5, graduate of Georgetown University, and brother to Maria, Tim, Mark, and Bobby.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know whether I like the last part. You didn't have to put that in there. The John F. Kennedy part was okay, but you didn't have to put the rest of them in there. Damn, man.
Given the banter that you and I and 2 of your brothers have had over the last 3 days, I got to tell you, I'm happy I'm not a member of that clan, man. There's some true love and there is some true competition amongst the Shriver group.
Yeah. It's a lot of the latter. I don't know how much of the former part there, but.
So we'll dive in a moment, Anthony, to a bunch of that stuff. But I want to wind the clock back. Your late uncle, President Kennedy, founded the Peace Corps by an executive order in 1961, and your dad was the first director of the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
What'd you learn from your dad as you talked to him, reflecting upon that part of his very, very illustrious career as it relates to running that agency, growing that agency, and a little bit as it relates to what you've done with Best Buddies? But what are some of the things you recall your dad telling you about his time of launching the Peace Corps and growing the Peace Corps?
Well, I mean, I think the most important lesson is he always kind of communicated to us that there's no greater life than a life of service. And that there's no more joy that's brought into your life than a life of service. And that if you're working day to day and trying to figure out ways to support others and to give back and to sort of be other-centered instead of self-centered, you're going to have a really happy life, and you're going to have a life full of faith, love, and joy. And, the Peace Corps is really an extension, and the War on Poverty is an extension, and Special Olympics, all these programs are really extensions, of the challenge that we have in our particular faith, which is Catholicism. And it's the message of Jesus Christ and the way we were all raised. And I think, there's so much joy in service, and there's so many great people you meet, and such a great sense of, having a life of purpose. And, every day, you kind of finish the day, and, how different your day is and how dynamic your day is and how interesting it is and the people you meet and how you feel. It's hard to match in any other career. And I think he used to just repeat that over and over. And we would see it around the dining room table. I mean, my mother and my father would have the most interesting dynamic conversations, challenging each other, inviting people were involved in, service around the table. And, it just became so stimulating and so exciting, and the places we would travel and in the United States and outside the United States, all revolving around this incredible work. It's just hard to do that and then decide, you want to be a dentist. It's just hard. Nothing against being a dentist.
Thank you for not saying just be a businessman like me. It's all good. I appreciate you going after the dental profession and not the business world.
I kept you out of that.
Thank you.
No, but they make it became so addictive. That the energy of it is super addictive. And I think, Daddy's energy was always so high because I think every day he woke up with an amazing sense of optimism, and a day that's super challenging and would have ups and downs. But, if he was lobbying for federal funding under the Peace Corps, just because President Kennedy wanted to launch the Peace Corps doesn't mean the money's coming from Congress. So he used to talk about, going up onto Capitol Hill and lobbying senators and congressmen and trying to get the Peace Corps Act authorized, which is a whole process, but how dynamic and exciting and the whirlwind of running around Capitol Hill just to get the money. And then you get the money. And then what do you do next? And then running all over the world, trying to launch these programs in these poor countries and trying to develop local bases of support and training the volunteers and setting up a whole organization that's training volunteers and educating volunteers and teaching them a foreign language. He just made it so exciting and dynamic, and, carried through on the war on poverty under President Johnson with all the programs he started, whether it's Head Start or Job Corps or Vista or foster grandparents. The list goes on, but the challenges are so similar. And, building great teams and teams that execute and deliver and set goals and follow through up on the goals and don't make excuses when there's failure and accept responsibility. Just all these great messages and ideas that you learn when you're involved in something that is only successful because you have to build a great community and you have to invest in people. And, unless you give your time and your energy to other people, these things don't work. So it's a great way to grow up. It's a great, message I think he gave to all of my siblings and of course to me, and, it carried through in his whole life, but it was really rooted always, in his faith. And, it's just his faith played a huge role in it all and always came back to that and always came back to that challenge of, for us, that Jesus Christ gives us every single day to be other centered and, to surrender to, his plan, not to your own plan, and release and let go and know that he's in charge. And I think Daddy was really a genius at, surrendering and letting go and letting the big guy be in charge. And I think that's why he was so successful.
1968, your mom starts Special Olympics. So here's your dad launching the Peace Corps and then your mom founding Special Olympics. That was 1968. You were 3. That was also the same year that your late uncle was killed. What do you remember about that era, Anthony, in the sense of both the excitement of your mom launching the Special Olympics, but then obviously the tragic death of your uncle?
Well, I don't remember anything related to Uncle Bobby dying. I remember the evolution of the Special Olympics like it was a second ago, because that carried over. We lived on a farm in Maryland, and that carried over for many, many years beyond 68.
It was a farm. It's now, just by the way, it was a farm. Now it's a suburb. You realize that.
Sadly.
I remember when Potomac, Maryland had beautiful long vistas and big rolling green hills, and today it's a bunch of McMansions. But anyway.
It is, sadly, yeah. And we were our farm was called Timberlawn. It was in Rockville. And there's thousands of homes there now and a huge super highway through it. But that went on for, many, many years. 68 was really what happened at Soldier Field in Chicago. But the sort of what we could call Camp Shriver was before 68, and Camp Shriver continued after 68. And Camp Shriver started again, honestly, in Potomac, Maryland. My parents ended up, that was their home that they lived in before they passed away. And she started Camp Shriver up again in her 80s. And used to do that in the month of June at our house in Potomac, Maryland, when she was literally in her 80s. So she was a super grassroots person, always was about the grassroots, really focused in on the mission at hand, really focused in on the people with special needs and really getting right to them and working directly with them one-on-one. She wasn't an operating person at a business level. She wasn't a great fundraiser, to be honest with you. She wasn't a great, team builder or organizer. That wasn't my mother's strength. My mother's strength was just sheer grit, energy, determination, and a real focus on the mission at hand, staying true to that and not getting bogged down in the execution of the administration and the operation of a business, because obviously Special Olympics has evolved into a really big business. So that really wasn't her strength. So she, was in the pool and she was on the track field and she was right out there day in and day out. She really felt like, I think her real calling was to be a coach, to be honest. She loved sports. She loved coaching. She loved being in it day in and day out. And she was really good at it. As we all know, you got to figure out what you really love. And then when you love it, you're really good at it. So that's what she was good at. And then, Special Olympics evolved into an organization, but, its structure has evolved out. It's all built out at the state level. And there's separate, organizations at every state, and they have their own board of directors and their own executive team. So, it was a very decentralized operation because that really wasn't what she was interested in. But that it was a whirlwind. Camp Shriver that started in Timberlawn was crazy. I remember like it was a second ago, she'd bus in big yellow school buses, people with intellectual disabilities. And in those days, it was the 60s and 70s. And they came dressed in all variety of different ways and all different types of shoes and sneakers and, all different hygiene and haircuts. And, it was quite a show. It'd be quite a show even today, but it was really a show then. We lived next door to, on our property, bordered facility there that housed people with intellectual disabilities that actually lived there on this campus. It would be like a Willowbrook, which is very famous from New York State. It was a very famous institution that my actual Uncle Bobby was instrumental in closing in New York State. Geraldo Rivera did a big expose on that, which is kind of an interesting thing to watch if your viewers ever have time. Anyways, Uncle Bobby went and visited that, but the place next door to us was similar to that. But she would bus a lot of them in and bus them in from other institutions in the Maryland area to get out there and start getting engaged in sports. And, in those days, they didn't have shorts and they didn't have shirts and there was no uniforms, and no training. But she did it. She put them on fields and she created obstacle courses, and we had some horses. She put them on the horses and put them in our pool. And the list goes on and on. But, when she was doing that, Daddy was doing his thing. And, as you know, he was over and became ambassador to France under Lyndon Johnson. So we went over to France in the late 60s, early 70s, and she brought that to France. And if you can imagine that even being more of a, shocking experience to have people with intellectual disabilities in the embassy in Paris and trying to get that going in Paris was quite a scene for the French in particular. But I do remember France. I was young, but I do remember that. And then, of course, Daddy came back in the 70s and ran with George McGovern for vice president against Richard Nixon.
Start a legacy. Start turning dreams into realities. A better world begins with you. Better communities start with us.
Anthony, just one quick thing on your mom before we move on, because I want to get to you and best buddies and all that stuff. Your mom went to Stanford. When I think Kennedy, I think Harvard for your uncles, Yale for your dad, Yale for your brother. Seems like you all are pretty much, New England sort of East Coast Ivy League schools. Was your mom something of a rebel by going to Stanford?
Nobody can quite understand it, and we never could get a straight answer from her. What was going on there, but there's still some family secrets. I don't really know the ins and outs on that thing. It's very, very strange. Always was to us. And we'd sort of bring it up and she'd look at us and smile and kind of change the conversation. So I don't know what the dynamic was going on there, but to go all the way across the country and be a woman and go to that university was very, very unusual in that era.
In that age, very much so. Yeah.
I have no idea what was going on. I still don't know exactly what was going on, but I'm sure there was something sketchy going on, and I don't want to know more about it, but I found it really unusual. I think everybody in the family found it really unusual. We were completely a Northeast family.
You went to Georgetown Prep, which some of our listeners may know happens to be the school where 2 Supreme Court justices went, as well as Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. It's someone who went to St. Albans School. I don't like saying that about Prep, as how many illustrious alums Prep has. But you went from Prep to Brown and then transferred from Brown to Georgetown. Why the transfer from Providence to DC?
wow, you really do your research and you get all these intricate details. I think everybody in my family wants to know about that switch. I just had a lot of different things going on in my life in that situation. And I think it was, probably the encouraged for me to move back to Washington, D.C. and have a little bit more supervision, I guess would be the best way to put it. But it just wasn't, I think, the right time. And I think being, kind of closer to my parents at that time was probably the right move for me. And it worked out great. I don't think, they say God's plan. I don't think I ever would have started Best Buddies if I had been in Brown, because the spirit of service and giving back was really embedded in the culture at Georgetown, more than Brown University, to be honest with you. So I think it was the right fit for me, and we all get to where we belong in mysterious ways. But I certainly got left Brown in a mysterious way, and at Georgetown in an unusual way. So, but it all worked out definitely for the best. So that, I'm happy about that. And, honestly, when I was at prep, we never had a sense that, we honestly always thought St. Albans was where the big shots went and the smart people went. And, all the political people's kids all went to St. Albans, and that's where the, brains went. And sort of the people that were more kind of middle of the road, sports oriented, and, wanted a Catholic education went to prep. But, Kavanaugh was there when I was there. And, both of them actually were there when I was there. Powell wasn't there when I was there. But it's incredible. And, it's, I have very, very vivid memories definitely of him. And he was always very conservative, even when he was a student. At prep, most of the prep kids were pretty conservative, I would say, as a general rule.
Maybe you were the head of the Young Democrats and he was the head of the Young Republicans. The two of you went at it. You were a history and theology major at Georgetown. You mentioned a moment ago how important your faith is to you, Anthony. I've also seen you both running Best Buddies, the way you manage your life and the people around it. And you talked a moment ago about your faith and about letting go. Dive for a moment about the role that faith plays in your life and being a very type A person, yet allowing your faith to allow you to let go.
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. Honestly, I haven't thought about that. It sort of seemed diametrically opposed, I guess, when you really think about it. It doesn't sort of go together, although it does go together, I guess, in the end of the day, really, really well. I mean, I'm still working at it, so I don't want to come across at all as preachy or that I've got it down, because I definitely don't have it down. I mean, it's a work in progress, and I try hard to be focused on it as much as I can, day in and day out. Days I slip and go back and grab and grip and hold on tight, and then there's days where I really let go and I try to really surrender, and I see incredible response and incredible success as a result of doing it, which builds my confidence in my faith, because it's scary. I mean, I think that's the first thing, I always kind of remind myself it's normal to be scared and have a lot of fear about where you're going to go if you really let go and you surrender and you sort of, try to not take control and own every single situation. So I think it's super hard. And if I'm a young person, I think it's even more difficult. So if someone's young, I think it's hard. I talk to my kids about it a lot, but I think it's, it's a process, as everything is. And it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of patience. It takes, a lot of prayer, I guess, again, I don't want to come across as preachy at all, but a lot of prayer. And I think it takes a lot of time to develop, your relationship. And again, in my religion, because Jesus Christ is the central figure in our faith, and whatever faith people have, I have most respect for. But I don't know how people get through their daily life without faith. And honestly, I just don't know how they do it. And I certainly wouldn't be able to get through it, and wouldn't be able to figure out how to get on first base without it. But I think it's a lot of practice. I think it's, God, I feel like, shows you that when you surrender, you'll see things start coming your way much more easily and in a much more kind of calm, more successful way, which I think builds your confidence, or at least builds my confidence and reassures me that I'm doing the right thing, and reassures me that the more I let it go, the more it comes to me, which they sort of seems like they should work in the opposite, but they actually work perfectly in tandem. The more I let it go, push it away, the more it comes closer to me.
Was there a seminal event or a person who, if you will, whether it be a father or not a father in the church, who sort of got you down that path of surrender?
Well, I grew up, really engaged in faith. So, I mean, I saw it all the time. I think my sort of surrender thing, a lot of it, I would say, in many ways, when my marriage ended and going through that whole process, the tension and the emotion and the stress of all that kind of brought me closer back to recognizing that, I was so powerless in the process that the only way to get through that and to achieve any kind of calm and steadiness in my life, my emotional and spiritual life, is to turn it over to God, and that He's got a plan for me, and it's got to be His plan, because otherwise this wouldn't possibly be happening. He wouldn't want this for me. And the more that I kept reminding myself and recognizing that and saying, you're in charge, you do however you see fit, the more everything started working out and got calmer and steadier, and sort of the process evolved and everything worked out for the best. But it didn't work out for the best when I was trying to hold on, and that I was worrying about all the different things I was losing or changing, or my finances and all those kinds of things that people worry about when they go through a process like that, which is an incredibly draining. Anybody that's been through it, I think probably the most emotional thing you go through in your life. That, and you would think the more that you hold on and you try to control it and manage it, the more success you have. But I found that when I started to do less and turn more over, that I actually was making more progress, and things were going smoother, and I was calmer, and my kids were calmer. That was really, I guess, the most pivotal moment for me to really see it the most in action. Because before that, I've been to a lot of funerals in my life, and we've had a lot of crazy stuff happen in my family, but nothing hit me in the same way that was sort of looked me right in the eye, that I had to manage sort of as I saw myself and manage and deal with myself. That was emotionally overwhelming, even beyond, going to a funeral, to be honest with you. And, when I started seeing it work in that situation, I started really building my confidence and started using it more. And then it just kept growing and growing. And it's really, I think grown for me in a big way in the last, 5 to 7 years since I've gone through that, and how helpful it's been, and then how I've been able to use it so many other things in my life. And the more I've done it in my job, the Best Buddies has grown like crazy in the last 5 to 7 years. I wake up some days and I can't believe the corporate lineup that we have, and all these blue chip companies now. And I sometimes go, where did this all come from, or how we keep getting all these people? And they come so much easier. Before, I would hunt them like crazy, and I'd work, and I'd travel, and I'd call like crazy. I mean, I still travel and I call, but it's not, if they don't respond or I don't get them, I just move on to the next one, and I don't worry about it at all. And then the next one just sort of pops up out of nowhere. Someone calls me, hey, you want to check out, BMW? They want to do this, blah, blah. They just come out of nowhere. So I just been, built a lot of confidence as a result, and it just keeps going. And it happens with my fitness. It happens really with everything. So I've just become a big believer in it.
There's so much in there. You mentioned you've been to a number of funerals. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but your father's funeral in 2011 was, honestly, of all the celebrations of life that I've gone to, your dad's funeral was truly one of the most amazing events I've ever been at. Obviously, because he was such an incredible person and the people who were there, but also what you and your siblings said about your dad. You got out of college, 85, 86, and you started Best Buddies in 89. What was it, Anthony, that gave you that sort of entrepreneurial spirit, in the sense that, there were plenty of other things you could have done. There were plenty of political campaigns you could have plugged right into. There's plenty, as you said previously, you didn't want to be a dentist. I got it. But what was it that said to you, I need to create my own organization? There was the Special Olympics. There was the Peace Corps. You could have gone done the Peace Corps. There are lots of things that you could have plugged into. What was it that said, I not only need to focus on this, but I need to do it myself?
Yeah. Well, I'd always been entrepreneurial. I think people are, you've learned this, I'm sure, with your kids. Since I was a little kid, I always had side hustles and side deals, and, whether I was selling puppies or selling pigs, or, selling candles in the summer, or, stealing wax out of a dumpster and boiling it in the stove and then selling them on the street. I was always had little deal where I was trying to hustle stuff because I was just creative and thought it was fun and exciting and dynamic, and I loved building something. So the entrepreneurial thing was always kind of part of my nature from when I was really young. And, I think it's just the way I am, the way I was born. And I'm sure you've got the same experience in your own career. You probably were like you are now when you were 10 or 8 or maybe even younger. I mean, I find it remarkable. And we try to mold our kids and push our kids in certain ways. And, it's like, it's God's plan. God made them in a certain way. And if they want to hustle and work 10 hours, 15 hours a day, they want to wake up super early and build their own thing, they will. But if they don't, you can ask them all day long to do it. And they're just not going to do it at the end of the day.
One thing on that, Anthony, let me just cut across you for a second. That's what I find to be so incredible about your family is that parents can push kids to do this or that, but your parents had the ability to instill in you and your 4 siblings this incredible sense of service that for all your entrepreneurial spirit, you pursued entrepreneurship in a nonprofit give back mode rather than I'm going to go be some billionaire, which I find to be really interesting and special. And obviously that loops back to the faith portion of it, right, and faith being a big piece of it. But hearing you say that as you were talking about your parents and what they instilled in you, I do find it to be exemplary that you and all of your siblings have focused on lives of service rather than going and doing your own thing.
Yeah. Well, no, you're super nice to say it. I mean, it goes back to what I was trying to say from the beginning. I think when you start doing it, it's just super addictive. And, you look at these other things that are out there, and I go to all these businesses. I was just at Coca-Cola headquarters last week. It's an incredible company. Up at, Rolex is a huge sponsor. I'm up there at their corporate headquarters. I've been to Geneva to their global headquarters and the one in New York on Fifth Avenue. And I've been to Jersey Mike's headquarters. And, it's just so hard. And I love those companies and they're so good to us. But, I walk in the halls and I have the meetings, or I go to the conference rooms, or, I meet with the environment. Like the Coke thing was really just amazing. The history of the company and the founding CEO and what a great guy he was and how he gave back. I mean, it's really an incredible business and it's part of, American history. It's not the same, and it just doesn't feel the same. And I think within the Best Buddies environment, we've been able to be super entrepreneurial. We have like a whole for-profit business division here where we've opened up all these bakeries and, we're opening up Jersey Mike's co-branded stores now with the founder of Jersey Mike's, and to make money kind of on a cash flow basis so that we're not asking people for money. And, you came to one of our camps and, I hope you feel like, we have a camp that's a good product in the marketplace, period. And the fact that Best Buddies owns that camp, it isn't run any differently than if, I owned it and I was putting the profit in my pocket at the end of the camp. So those are all little entrepreneurial things that I can continue to do. And Best Buddies allows me to, if I come up with an idea with you right now and we want to do it, I can start it tonight and go with it. To be in any kind of another environment, it's super hard, I find, to, have that kind of freedom. To go back to your original thing about the Best Buddies thing and doing my thing, I think just to be candid with you, part of it's ego. I mean, I come from a family with big egos. I'm just being honest. And I think wanting to do your own thing and, breaking out on your own was a big thing for me. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I kind of had the whole evolution of coming back to Georgetown from Brown and kind of being, supervised a little bit more closely in Washington, D.C. I think wanting to get out of there and do my own thing, come to a new city that everybody thought was pretty much a dump in the South. And Miami was full of immigrants and people that didn't speak English and, which I always found interesting, the diversity of it all, and trying to make a mark, of my own, where there was nobody in my own family here at all. Nobody was even in Florida, much less Miami. I found that challenging and exciting and kind of followed my spirit of wanting to do my own thing and start my own thing and just sort of be my own man. I mean, for the lack of a better word or lack of a better explanation, to be candid with you. And I think, I sort of, found my way here and for a variety of different reasons. And, I definitely was able to develop my own reputation. I definitely be able to build Best Buddies. There were no other kind of global nonprofits headquartered in Miami. Everybody was in New York and everybody was in Washington, D.C. That's where all the big charities were.
That's changing today.
Yeah, well, it's changing. Now I don't know whether I look like a genius, but I kind of look like a genius that I picked Miami 35 years ago. Now everybody and their sisters coming here. But yeah, the city is such a different place. But, I think, it's wanting to do your own thing. I mean, I think, that was also instilled, in my family. I mean, everybody, even though we were in similar businesses and some of them were in politics, I think everybody always kind of had this spirit of wanting to break out on their own, somehow prove their stripes, for the lack of a better word, because it is, as you said, it's so competitive. And it is really competitive. And the competitive thing, it's good and it's bad. I mean, it gets you up early in the morning and makes you hustle. The bad part is it's competitive, and you get competitive with your people in your own family, and that can create emotion, and that can last for years and years and carry on even for decades. And it's hard to get rid of that kind of spirit and the competition with people in your own family and your own cousins. And I think you see some of that going on in my cousin Bobby Kennedy's campaign for president. I think it's a lot of competition there. I think there's a lot of jealousy there, and there's a lot of people in the family that themselves would like to be running for president who aren't, whether Bobby had the courage or, the gumption or the desire or the ego, whatever you want to call it, to do good and to be in that position, I think is challenging for a lot of people, so whether we're playing on the football field or we're sailing a boat, racing each other, we were always in a very competitive environment, and that our parents put us in. I think my grandfather started that by having his kids compete against each other. And, we grew up in an environment where we competed against each other, straight on. So I think it's funny and everybody laughs about it, but, at the end of the day, some of it is kind of serious, and it does get people, cuts them to their core and can be, I think, emotionally challenging for a lot of people. And I think, honestly, a lot of you're seeing that on a national stage with my cousin, but that goes on at a much more local level, in Hyannisport, or, on a football field or on a tennis court, or in our jobs and in our careers. And I think in a lot of ways, that's partially, why I'm sitting here in my office in, downtown Miami.
By the way, you and I are taking down Tim and Mark in that 2-on-2 volleyball. Just so we're clear on that one. They'll both watch this, and
they're not really competitive. It's not really competition anymore at this
point.
So
Exactly.
It's too easy for us. It's too easy, those guys.
With your height on my team, I feel very comfortable. So Best Buddies now, you've got a number of different, what I would call, services that Best Buddies focuses on. Let's just, for a moment, I want to move from that to the philanthropy of it. And because you've been masterful, I think, Anthony, as it relates to how you have created the fundraising machine that propels Best Buddies into new areas. But right now you have Best Buddies Friends in about 3,000 schools across the country. Just for a moment, to anyone who's listening who doesn't understand what Best Buddies Friends does, what does Best Buddies Friends do?
Well, it's a mentoring program. So we're in about 3,300 schools globally, where we pair people with intellectual development disabilities one-to-one with young student volunteers who mentor. And so that's been super effective, and I think really meaningful to create lasting friendships, where people with special needs develop social skills, because if they don't have good social skills and they don't have a good network and support and encouragement and confidence, like all of us, it's really difficult to find them a job or to find them a place to live in the community, and for them to be actively engaged in, community life. And I think, it's a good starting point for everybody to have a strong social network and to build your confidence through a network of friends. I don't know how anybody gets anywhere in life without a great network of friends. I mean, they're a great athlete of all of our lives. So I think to get people with intellectual disabilities, that's, critical for their long-term success. So that's why we start with that.
And then Best Buddies Housing.
So we have basically 5 pillars of the organization. We have our school-based programs, which we have programs to mentoring in middle schools, high schools, universities. We have an adult-based mentoring program. We have an employment program where we find them good, solid, competitive jobs.
Give the stat on the number of people with IDD who are unemployed.
It's about 84% in the United States, higher outside the United States. On a gross basis, the people that participate in Best Buddies, they generate revenue for themselves about $28 million a year. So it's a significant number that they get paid on an annualized basis. They pay taxes on that money, but more importantly than paying taxes, they feel part of a community, part of a company, and they do a great job. And we have a lot of people that are, star employees in major companies, whether it's TJX, they've hired 500 people. Jersey Mike's just committed to hiring 3,000 people. So we have some of these big multinationals that are committed to major numbers of jobs. But our people, they come in and like we have a buddy that works in the NFL and he's a statistician in the NFL. And they've got about 20 people that are statisticians. And our buddy's got autism and he's rated number one every single week above everybody else. And he's the only disabled person because his attention span and his focus on the screens and on each play is better than anybody else. So he's the perfect person for that job. So I think, the key with our employment program, to me, the key with every job is you got to find the person and they got to have the passion for the job and they got to have the skill sets for the job to succeed. And I think many of our participants have the skill sets and have the passion for particular jobs. This guy in particular loves the NFL and loves football and also has autism where he has the concentration or the ability to focus in a very narrow way to watch the screen all day on Sunday and Monday night and Thursday night football to do his job really well. So, we have thousands of people working in our jobs program, which is, I think, hugely important and really allows them to transition into staring at a television or being on supplemental security income and earning a good solid wage, paying taxes and be part of the culture of a company that believes in hiring and having diversity in the workforce. So we have our jobs program, then we have a housing program where, again, it's unified and it's people living side by side, non-disabled with disabled. We connect it to our university program so that the buddies can find jobs at the universities and can be part of the whole fabric of a university with sports and culture and community, which is so important. So we try to find, ability to place them in housing programs that are, literally within a mile of the university is the ideal. Even across the street is even better if we can find those locations. So we've got a great corporate partner who's the largest producer of student housing in the United States called Landmark out of Georgia. And so we have a good partnership with them, which is allowing us.
I know Wes. I know Wes very, very well.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah. Very well.
Oh, my God. What a small world. So he's given us some good deals on these properties, and we're trying to go into all the Landmark properties around the United States because the products that they're building meet the standards that we want to try to deliver for people with intellectual disabilities, and they're living in community there. And it's worked really well, I think, for them because we're renting a bunch of their apartments and we supervise it through our program, and they're scaling that housing program really, really fast, and they're building them all over the place. So anyways, having a partner like that's really helpful, and he's a really nice guy and good guy and obviously super smart.
Wes has done extremely well. One thing, the way you talk about the buddies, I've met a number of them being with you, both in Miami as well as in California. When someone, if you will, gets into the Best Buddies program, how long are they typically a buddy? Does someone sort of, once you become one, you stay one for your entire life? Do you have a certain period that you will be actively engaged with Best Buddies and then move on? Or how does that work?
It varies. To be honest with you, the minimum commitment when someone joins is a year. But, I was at our event in Nashville on Saturday. We did our Mother's Day event, and, multiple people came up to me. I've been paired up with my buddy for 12 years. I've been paired up for 15 years. I've been paired up for 10 years. And then you have buddies that are paired up for a school year and, they stop and they leave, or someone pairs up, they're a senior in high school and they go off to college and they may keep in touch with their buddy or they may not, like normal friendships. And some of them are, in people's weddings. One of the buddy pairs I was with on Saturday gave me the story that her buddy was a bridesmaid in her wedding. So that's a great success story. I have a buddy down here, my sort of quote official buddy, although I have so many, but my official buddy, I've known him. I met him when I first moved to Miami. He got paired up 32 years ago. So he's been around a long, long, long time, and he's been in our jobs program now for probably 28 years. So that's a long time. So they vary all over the place. But, the school programs, we recruit kids, we get them in, want them to have the experience, and we ask that they do it for a minimum of a year. And some do it longer, some do it for the year. And, they're not all home runs. I'm not saying to say everything works out perfectly. Not every pair that we set up, not every, relationship works out great. Some of them we have to shut down. Some of them don't work at all. Some of the student volunteers are terrible. in some cases. They say they're going to do it and then they don't, and they flake, and they never reach out to the buddy, which is heartbreaking. But it happens. I want to make sure I don't misrepresent what's going on here, because we have the success stories, but then we also have stories that are super challenging, and students that are disappointing and don't do what they're supposed to do and aren't focused, and we haven't been able to motivate them successfully.
The way you run Best Buddies, having participated in a number of your events, you have, I believe, Anthony, an incredible customer service mentality. And I think it's somewhat unique in the nonprofit world. A lot of people in the nonprofit world think, you like my cause, and I'm not going to pick. If I pick some name out of the ether, I don't want in any way be implying that they don't get customer service. But you give to some environmental cause, some education institution, and there's a sense that because you either went to the university or because you're deep into environmental conservation, that it's kind of a one-way street. Write the check. Yeah, I'll have you over for a cocktail party and it's all good, but thanks. We've got the policy, we've got the engagement, and you're here as a contributor, but not an active participant. And the way I watch you and your team engage with people who support Best Buddies is as good as any service organization in the country. What I did with you 2 weeks ago in California, from top to bottom, the service level, the attention to detail was as good as any corporate event I've ever gone to, with unlimited resources. Where, but I mean that, and I'm not obviously I'm not saying this. There are plenty of things I can compliment you on. What I'm key on here, Anthony, is this: where'd you get that service mentality? Because that's not usual. There are tons of companies that know that if they could be better at customer service, they'd be better customers. Their customers would stay longer. They'd spend more money, but they don't get it. They don't know how to apply service and have people come out of an experience feeling fully delighted. And I will tell you that on my personal engagement, and I've been engaged with lots and lots of organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, hotels, concerts, all sorts of things, that you and your team pull it off better than almost anyone. Where's that come from?
Well, as you know, from running all these businesses, I have an incredible team, right? So, I know it's kind of a cliche, but it's really true. And I have a lot of people that stay here for a really long time, and really buy into the culture that we have here that I've tried to build from the beginning. I still have the first guy ever hired out of college, still works here. So I think, having continuity in staff and having a real sense of culture and understanding the culture and the dynamic of the culture is super important. So I put a lot of time and energy into that. I've, always had the spirit of gratitude, honestly. I lead really with gratitude, and I have so much gratitude for the people who share their treasure with us. And, for the work that it takes to generate and raise money. I know how much work it takes for those people to make money in whatever businesses they're in. And I know every business is super competitive, and I have that in my mind all the time. And I know when someone shares their treasure with us, it's really a lot of work to write a check for 10 grand or 20 grand or 100 grand or $1 million or 5 million or whatever the money is, or for $100. And, I just know it's really hard. And I know it's really hard for people to part with their treasure. I think typically it's just a challenging thing to do. And I've always wanted people to know, one, I'm super grateful, and I take it with the utmost sense of responsibility to ensure that what they did to earn that money, that we manage it in an efficient and meaningful way, and that we put it to good use, and that we show appreciation all the time. And I think we try to show appreciation by constantly trying to understand how can we be more supportive of what I always call as our customer. What do they need and what do they want? And whether it's a customer who comes to a camp who needs a bike that works or needs nutrition that feeds them so that they can perform to their best, or that there's a camper and it's got a candle in it because it should smell good when you walk into the camper, or whether it's Rolex and what kind of signage do they want in order to drive revenue to sell more watches, or whether it's Jersey Mike's and being able to build their culture and support it by working with our people and being able to sort of, deliver on our end of the bargain. I don't want to, I don't ever view my work as a handout. And, I think I've always tried to have a sense that, you have to earn your stripes, and you have to work super hard, and you need to remind yourself constantly that whatever success you have, it's by the grace of God, and that you need to be grateful for it. And you need to continue to express gratitude on an ongoing basis. And I try to, articulate to the team that, those are the ways that we can show gratitude, by treating people well when they arrive, by giving people an experience that's hopefully unique to Best Buddies. And that they understand if we treat them that way, that we're treating the participants that we work with the same way. Because I'd never go to anybody and meet them and, there's one aspect of their business or one aspect of their life that's really organized, really tight, really efficient. And then the other part of it's a disaster and a mess and sloppy. It's like so many of these like really wealthy people that I meet, you go to their business and it's super tight. You go to their house, it's super tight. You look in the refrigerator, it's really organized. And, so, I think it goes through everything that you do. And I say to them constantly, like, if people who are investing in us come and they see we're running their part of what their experience is super tight, they're going to know that the thing that they're investing in, the programs that they're investing in, they're going to be run the same way. Because it would be absurd for me to be super interested in having the bikes work really well at a camp, or the candle, or the food good, and then all the programming I have for all the students would be a disaster. It just would be inconsistent with someone's personality. People just, in my judgment, don't really work that way. So, I think it's a lot of different things. I'm also just really, lack of a better word, super anal, have enormous attention to detail, and, try to constantly take care of the things that I've been given and the treasure that I have. And it's just sort of, again, my personality. I've been like that since I've been little. And, I care for my bikes. I care for the office. I try to care for our employees. I try to care for our customers. I try to care for my, everything that comes in my, I try to eat the right food because I'm caring for, the body that God has given me. So, I think it all kind of just sort of is, kind of my nature, I guess, and the culture that we have here. But I appreciate a lot, what you said. It means a lot to me, and trying super hard to, continue to do it well, and to try to, deliver excellence to everything that we do.
Yeah. You've had a number of GOATs be active fundraisers and supporters of Best Buddies.
Yeah.
And there are not many organizations that have a number of GOATs who've been engaged. They get one big name or whatever, but you've had Muhammad Ali, Carl Lewis, and Tom Brady, 3 GOATs in their respective fields, be big supporters of Best Buddies. When you think about, first of all, just for a second, what was Ali like?
Yeah, well, don't forget all our cycling goats.
Look, we got plenty of cycling goats, but when you and I talk about Chris Froome and the others that you and I love, and most of the people on this webcast are like, who is this guy? So I hate to say it, but our love for cycling doesn't exactly go across like a Muhammad Ali or a Tom Brady. But first of all, Tom has been, you talk about people who give you their treasure and who invest and see it come back. Tom has been a supporter of Best Buddies for over 2 decades, 20 years, correct?
Yeah, 25 almost.
25. That's incredible to have somebody with his, everybody wants a piece of Tom. And so the idea that he keeps coming back, and you're about to do your event in Boston, are you not?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. But for a second, go to Ali, because I'm just intrigued by Ali. My mom met Ali once and didn't really have the ability to talk to him. She was just photographing him. But I'm intrigued because, there's only one Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm lucky. He was great, and he came to so many of our events, and he came to my house so many different times and participated in such a big way for Best Buddies, and, participated when we were really a small organization and didn't have big budgets and, huge events all over the world. So it was great. I think, he's, again, these people, their character is so clear to me, and, who they really are truly is so clear when you really spend time with them. And I think he was such a guy focused in on the underdog. And I think he was such an underdog his whole life. And I think his relationship and his connection with, and the empathy that he had, and I think just the way he gravitated to people that had intellectual disabilities, and his empathy to those people, because I think he kind of, he felt their struggle, and he felt their sense of being isolated and segregated against, and sort of didn't have a seat at the table. And I think through his whole life, I think in so many different ways, he never felt like he had a seat at the table, and he fought so hard to have a seat at the table. And obviously his life and his history and his activism is obviously extremely famous. I don't, well known. I don't need to go through it all, but I think there's a lot of how he grew up that I think resonated with the way people with intellectual disabilities grew up and were treated. So I think the connection of our cause for him, I think, was strong. I think we're stronger for him than for any of the other people that we've had or that you even named there, to be honest with you. So I think we had that. As I always say, our magic are our buddies. Right. I mean, they're our secret sauce. And I think the more that we try to get people to connect to that without beating them over the head and getting them to see, the joy that these people bring into our world and the incredible contributions they can make when given opportunity, I think is what is the best way to sell what we do and to keep people who are super successful connected to it, where they feel our mission in action and they feel the enormous success with their participation, what the success and impact they can have on people with intellectual disabilities. And I think Ali was acutely aware of his celebrity and his influence and his power to move people in a direction, especially at the end of his life, and how people would absolutely go insane over him anywhere he went. The biggest star that I've probably ever been around, I think, and I've been a few of the movie stars are big and they got a lot of attention, but I think Ali was kind of a special, unique figure in the history of our country for so many reasons.
And will Brady ride a bike when you guys do your bike thing? Does he still?
He rode a bike. The only time he ever rode a bike was when he rode a bike the first year he ever did it, and then he got to be, I guess, what everybody would refer to now as the GOAT, and he went off the bike and never got back on the bike. But he did the other stuff. I mean, he threw out the footballs. He played. We had a football game at Harvard. He played the game. Was the quarterback. He gave us a lot of time. I mean, he was there Friday. He was there all day Saturday. We used to do a criterium race on tandem bikes with a buddy on the back and a football player celebrity in the front. He rode in those every year. He shot a PSA. We sold Tom Brady T-shirts, and we have Tom Brady license plates in the state of Florida now with his face on the license plate. So, we honored him in November, and he shows up and sits at the table at the dinner and gives a speech and throws out the football. So he's, I'm nothing but good things to say about him. And I think, he's had great relationships with many of our buddies over long periods of time. And when they've been sick, he calls them on the phone. And, he's really been genuine. I can give example after example. But I've tried to also make it a two-way street for him. I've tried to connect him to the mission, make him feel great about what he's doing. I've hooked him up with some of our corporate sponsors and tried to do deals for him. Audi became a huge sponsor of Tom, and he had cars and drove them. And, we did a deal on the side, and he got, paid for that. And so I try to, every person I bring in, I try to think about, how can this be a mutually beneficial relationship? How can we, do this together? It doesn't have to be a one-way street. It doesn't have to be all about best buddies. It can be about the cyclists as well as best buddies. It's like, I hope, you come to the camp, you have a great experience. And you also know that, we're getting a lot out of it because we're raising a lot of money that can deliver on our programming. But, celebrities can come to these things, and also we can figure out ways to support them. We just had Drake May, who's the third pick of the NFL draft. We actually just announced that he's going to become the new chair of the ride in Boston.
No need.
Because, he's 21 and he's young and he's new and he's playing. And I think we got to keep it moving. Tom's still definitely involved and he's an ambassador, but, we got to bring new blood into everything that we do and certainly be respectful of the people that have already participated. Carl Lewis has been helping for, 31 years probably. He's one of the first people I ever got to Best Buddies, and he still shows up and, displayed all his 9 gold medals at our events before and held events at his house. And,
it's amazing.
It's just, it's a lot of work for these guys, but again, I think trying to keep them connected, trying to show them respect, give them good service, and, trying to give them a good experience, I think is key, and not take anything for granted, and I think, we got to keep reminding ourselves how lucky we are to have these people who participate and show them the love that they deserve.
Final thing, Anthony. There seems to be a big pushback on DE&I these days. Bill Ackman being one of the most vocal people out there as it relates to at least corporations moving away from DE&I and not being quite as focused as, if you will, Larry Fink and BlackRock would like corporations to be focused on DE&I. Given that Best Buddies is all about inclusion and diversity and bringing in diverse talent. What do you say when you hear people like Bill Ackman out there saying we shouldn't downplay DE&I and inclusion and diversity and inclusion across the country?
Well, I mean, I think there's a middle ground. I mean, I think, the country went pretty crazy on it, and pretty extreme, and felt, at least me here at Best Buddies, felt enormous amounts of pressure to be doing things in the way that we, quote, had to do them. Otherwise, we got into trouble. So, I mean, I think we kind of came at the issue in a sort of heated, fired up, kind of gaslighting kind of environment. And I think it started to settle back down. I think there's a place for it. And I think diversity in the workforce creates great companies and great businesses. And if you don't have different opinions at the table, I think you fail in the long run and you lose. And I believe that in my core. But I think having the pressure and being hammered to do certain things and to check certain boxes, I think is wrong and not effective. And I think, great leaders want different views. And I think great leaders and great companies that thrive long term, I think the best way to do it is to show that you have a diverse workforce and that you're bringing people in that are qualified, and you're not bringing people out in just because you want to check a box. So I think, I think there's a way to do it and do it really well, and to have a really great business and to be really successful and make money and grow your business, and know that those businesses are the businesses that have diversity in the workforce, but not to overwhelm them and pick at them and go nuts on them if they don't have X percentage of this group or X percentage of that group. I think a lot of that was going on. A lot of people felt pressure, including me. I felt a lot of pressure. So I think we've got to kind of find a middle ground that works well. But I think, the whole card of people being victims, and that you have to, allocate certain slots for certain people because they've been victimized. I don't think that mentality is positive, and I don't think it gets us to where we want to go, and it doesn't build great companies and doesn't give employees the right environment to work in.
So given that we're in the month of Minds of All Kinds, I'm super appreciative of you joining me, Anthony. It's been
thank you.
Super awesome. Insightful. I guess final is how's it feel to be a granddad, and how's it feel to have your daughter Caro graduate from your alma mater? Those both have got to be fun things, huh? But making you feel a little old, huh?
Yeah. You know what it is? It does. Thank God my grandchildren don't call me grandpa. By the grace of God, that name faded real quick. But yeah, I'm super proud of Caro. Actually going to Georgetown next weekend, and she's graduating, walking down the aisle finally. We're getting another one through that. So I'm proud, and she's doing some stuff here with Best Buddies, which is great too. And, I mean, I don't know, God is great. And as you know, you're on the bike, and, you're doing your job, and you're working hard and waking up early, and, your family's healthy. And you got God at the center of it all. It's pretty hard to beat that life. So I'm, eternally grateful and on my knees all the time, thanking God for my wonderful life, and for good friends like you who take the time and pay attention to the things that we do, and that you realize that these things do matter and want to make people aware of them. So I appreciate that very much.
Thanks for taking the time, my friend. Great to see you.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Have a great one. Bye.